Welcome to the Collector's Archive, Season 5, Episode 5.
Good afternoon, Matt. How are we doing, sir?
Hello, I'm good, thank you. A little bit warm, but yeah, all good. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it is a warm one this lovely sunny June afternoon. Yeah. I think definitely some air cons needed, or plenty of windows open for this one. But yeah, no worries. We'll push on regardless. As is customary, as we're starting out, do you want to take a moment just to let everybody know who you are and where they can find you on the socials?
Yes, I'm Matt Paul, or Kraken Creations, or the Kraken Wakes in various different places, depending on what was available when I decided to sign up. But I guess my main place I post on the socials is Instagram, where I am the Kraken Wakes, or the _Kraken_Wakes. I also sell bits on eBay and Etsy as Kraken Creations or the Kraken Wakes. And then generally I hang around on Facebook as myself on some of the toy groups, mainly the Action Force ones.
Yep, good stuff. What I'll do is there'll be links appearing somewhere on the screen as you're as you're going through those. I don't mind pimping for other people. It's all good.
Thank you.
It's a community after all. It's what we do. It's what we do.
Yeah.
Right. I don't think it's going to be a difficult question this to get started with, but.
So I need to cover up the background or something.
Yeah. Do you want to tell us what you collect, Matt?
It's Action Force.
Yeah.
You don't G.I. Joe, maybe. Some people might call it G.I. Joe, depending on what part of the world you're from. But yeah, Action Force. That's pretty much it, really. I suppose I'd quite like the room for other bits. I started out in a little corner of this room, and it's gradually just expanded and taken over. Kicked my other half out of it in a nice way. She got a different part of the house for her hobby room. But yeah, it's all consuming Action Force, really, I suppose, for me.
Yeah. No, that's good stuff. And why do you collect Action Force? And is there a particular reason why you chose that particular toy line?
I suppose as a kid, I think I started out, I'd have various toys like you would as a kid. Lego was a kind of a big one for me for a little while. I'd get quite a lot of Lego sets. Space was kind of one of the big themes when I was a kid, and Castle, which I didn't have, but I always looked at longingly. And then there was just one day when I was in town with my mum, probably the summer holidays, and I was a little bit late to Action Force, really, as far as Palatoy goes. So it was pretty much mostly on clearance at that point.
Right.
And there was a clearance shop in Retford where I grew up, and they had an Action Force figure. And I begged and I harangued my mum, and I was an absolute painful child that day. For 50p for a figure. There was kind of she'd offered me something earlier in the week or the week before, and I didn't say yes to it. So I kind of, in the back of my mind, I'd always got this 50p or whatever it was in my head that I'd still got in the bank stored up. And I got Action Force figure because I saw them and they just looked amazing, and it was Skip from Z-Force.
Right.
Ever since then, really, as a kid, it was all about Action Force. I'd get other bits at times, but whereas lots of my friends maybe had bits of Star Wars, I had Star Wars as well, and they had kind of different collections going on as a kid. From that point on as a kid, and then I grew out of it for a little bit. It was always about Action Force, really, I suppose. Hasbro came in and I left it behind for a little while, and then I discovered eBay when I was at university, which was a US thing at the time. It was not really a UK thing at that point. And I just started looking one day, and I picked up a few figures and kind of went to toy fairs and things like that. It just kind of took over, really, I suppose, at various times. I suppose I've got the collector thing in me, that taking the list and getting things and organising and finding things, I suppose. But yeah, it's to me, it was just a big, massive part of my childhood. Looking around at it now, sorry, wastefully. And it was just amazing. I don't know, just the packaging, the design, the kind of the whole thing at the time. Obviously, war toys were still quite a big thing when I was growing up at that point. Although space was kind of starting to take over a little bit. But yeah, I just love it. it's fantastic. So many different kind of designs and figures and ideas, and there's kind of standard military stuff, there's wacky sci-fi stuff, there's kind of futuristic creatures and all that kind of thing. It's just got quite a big mix of things that I like.
Yeah. So would you say then, is that what motivates you to collect now then, so like is that your motivation for doing it now, or is there something else that motivates you? And is that motivation working towards a goal with your collecting, or is it just kind of like an organic thing?
I suppose, it was always just wanting what I had as a kid, and then the things I didn't have as a kid. With it being a clearance line, there were lots of things available, but you saw the annuals and you saw the comics and you saw hardbacks and things like that, and you couldn't get it all. It just wasn't available, and things were harder to find anyway on general release, some of the bits. So I suppose I've always just got it in me, I suppose, as a person, like lots of collectors have, that they want to have everything. Sounds a bit kind of spoilt, doesn't it? I suppose I don't know, but it's just that kind of ticking the box and ticking it off the list. There's some things that you start out with your favourites, and then you might get more of your favourites. You might want to army build a little bit, and then you start out just gradually. It just takes over a little bit. In terms of how much you've got, I suppose. So it's kind of filling that missing gap from childhood, kind of thing. I think it is, yeah. Obviously, the nostalgia thing. It'd be quite. If I could swap it all and go back and be that kid again, then I'd do that. That in a heartbeat, I suppose. And this is, one of those ways of kind of filling that little gap, I suppose. It's not just about nostalgia about the toys, but it's about everything else around those times, I suppose. When I can look at the figure and I can remember where I got it from, what I was doing at the time. Was I on holiday? Was I visiting my auntie in Liverpool? That kind of thing with my mum, and all those kind of things. I suppose it's just all wrapped up together, really, I suppose, in that neat little childhood parcel. Yeah. So, and as I mentioned, do you have is there a particular aim or goal to your collecting then? No, not really, no. I mean, at one point it was about being completist, I suppose, and there is still that little bit of it with Palatoy stuff. I'm very close to having a full run with variants. It's just like maybe a handful of accessories I need to have everything, apart from a couple of figures which are pricey, like Gaucho and Jammers, where if you go down the variant route with those, that could get quite expensive quite quickly. So I suppose that was one driving factor. But then that kind of faded away a little bit, because with the Hasbro era, I wanted a complete run of everything Hasbro released in the UK or Europe. Right. And I did that, and I quickly realised, that there were things in there that I just didn't like, and I didn't have any kind of nostalgia for. Things that, stuff like the Road Toad that people probably make fun of in the community because it was like a little trailer thing for a vehicle. It was a bit rubbish in the nicest way. And having one of those, it was just taking itself on space on the shelf, really, I suppose. So, at that time it was about completing things. Now I think it's more about being able to arrange stuff and having a nice display, I suppose, kind of in the background a little bit. The shelves are vaguely arranged, but there's stuff a little bit all over the place. So, the focus now is trying to make a nice display out of it, so I can come up and not feel stressed by it because there's bits falling apart. Right. There's something that's not with the right figure, or it's fallen down and things like that. Just being able to display it nicely so it looks nice and it feels like somewhere I want to sit and enjoy the room, I suppose, rather than looking around and getting a bit worried about things. No, I totally get that. Where I am, and I have my collection space, is a bit of a premium, because I'm up in the loft. It's not a particularly big loft,
So all my stuff's remains in the box, sadly. So I've got shelving and it's in the box. So I live in hope for having a space where it can be freed and put out on display. But I do the rotation thing. I'll take a piece out of the box and have it on the shelf or something like this for a bit, and then it'll go away. But no, I do like the arrangement that you've got there, especially like the colour of the shelving as well. And it's a good setup.
Lucky with the space that I've got, really, I suppose. Yes, that I've got the space to be able to display stuff, really, I suppose.
When did collecting become a thing for you then? Did you, were there any particular circumstances that brought you to it, and was there a particular figure or vehicle or anything like that did it for you?
I think I always, as a kid, I kind of, when I think about collecting, I think about kind of having nice versions of things, I suppose. So as a kid, it was kind of about keeping the magazines I'd buy and things like that in nice condition. I'd obviously read them, but I try and take care of things as a kid. And then I suppose it was when I started to have not really disposable income, I guess, because it was just, it was a Saturday job and a paper round, really, I suppose. So not really disposable income, I guess. But one of the things I used to collect and still do a little bit was Doctor Who. Right. So I kind of started down that route, and then, as I say, when I found eBay US when I was at university, I think that's really when I got a few bits again. Yeah. The one thing really that I not always wanted, but I wanted as a kid, was the whale, the hovercraft.
Right.
So I can remember seeing it in the discount store that I mentioned before Christmas one year, and I mentioned it to my mum and dad, and it was really, I think it was too close to Christmas because they'd have, spent what they were going to spend on me. Yeah. So I never got it, but I'd always look at it longingly. I'd see it, the Action Force annuals that were amazing. The early ones used to have little diorama shots of the toys in there, and that always made it look so cool. So I suppose I started looking for a whale when I was at university and when I was on eBay US, and that really, I suppose, kind of that hunt. Although I didn't get a whale at that point, that kick-started it all, really, I suppose. And then from that point, it didn't disappear, I guess. Right. I think the first thing I got when I started collecting again was I think it was Dr. Mindbender, from the Hasbro era. Right. He's quite a kooky character, quite unusual, quite like that kind of out there stuff for it. So I got him, and then it kind of, as I went around car boots, and I lived in London for a little while, and there were quite a few collectors fairs and things like that at that time. I was shopping Luton I used to go to when I could, and they had stuff, but it was quite expensive at that point for what it was. Yeah. So yeah, that kind of kick-started it, just that hankering, and that kind of, that first figure that I got brought back all the floodgates, and then gradually, I started to want more bits, I suppose, really, yeah. Right.
Yeah. No, it's, I think, it's a lot of eBay, I think, is probably a place where a lot of us started, in the early days. Looking for stuff and hunting stuff down. I know it's what did it for me, back in the early days. What's the most recent piece you've got in your collection then? What's new? What last landed on your desk?
I suppose it's boring stuff, really. I suppose just hunting down those last few accessories. So just silly things like I think one of the things was the Kraken. So lots of the Action Force stuff had two releases, two variants to most of the figures. So there was an earlier softer plastic one. Yeah. And there was a hard plastic version. So I realized when I was sorting out a couple of years ago that I had 10 Krakens, but I didn't have 5 of the soft ones and 5 of the hard ones, and I didn't have the right nest with them. Just silly things like that, really, I suppose. So the last thing I got was a net to finish off the Kraken run, which has 15 by 15 holes. I mean, it's ridiculous, isn't it? That one that has 14 by 15 holes isn't good enough. Right. So that was probably one of the last bits. Yeah. other than that, I think that the last probably exciting bit that a lot of people were getting excited about was the RoboSkull Kickstarter.
Yeah.
Skeletron.
Right.
So, that's probably the bit that you'd point to and say, here's something quite cool, isn't it? So yeah, that's amazing.
Right. The Kraken net then, is that you said you just got in then, is that an original official, or is it like a reproduction one?
No, it's original. Yeah. So,
right. Does anybody do reproduction nets then?
No. I think the closest thing probably that's probably easy to get and would be cheaper than anybody doing anything. I've never seen any material that's good enough. I think the Lego nets.
Oh yeah.
So you can get little Lego nets that are about the same size. They look quite close to each other. When you've got it tucked up under the Kraken's arm, he's parading around near the sea or whatever he's doing, scaring people. It looks good enough, I think, for people, I suppose. Right.
I'll bear that in mind. Yeah, I've got a couple of Krakens and they don't have nets, so it's like it's been one of those things that it's like a mental note that I've had to say, at some point look to see if there's anything out there, kind of thing. But I'll bear that in mind. Yeah, I don't think it's a variant. I think it's probably just maybe a hiccup on the production line. But one of my Krakens, he's got a bit of a lazy looking eye to him, bless him.
Yeah.
It looks a bit derpy, kind of like. Yeah. I was really surprised. You mentioned about the soft versus hard plastic. There's a few red shadows I've got that are like that, and it's. But what I noticed as well, I mean, I know a little bit about Action Force, but not a lot, not a great deal. So this is going to be as much of education to me as it is to hopefully some of my usual viewers that are just here for the Transformers kind of thing. But the harder plastic red shadows, I noticed that the eyes are slanted the wrong way kind of thing, and they don't. The heart. I think they were remolded. I don't know if they used the original sculpts to remold them or not. I'm not too sure, but they were a little bit. So on the later ones, on the red shadows, they've got kind of platform boots a little bit, like lifts in their boots. I don't know whether it's just part of the design. They realised it was a little bit too small. I'm not too sure. Yeah. Sorry. So there's that, and then the helmet looks a little bit less menacing with the eyes as well. Really, I suppose. Yeah. And I think in the community, kind of that one's generally known as the doofus shad. Doofus.
But it looks a little bit. I suppose a little bit more feminine. I suppose like a lady shadow or something. Really, I suppose the helmet shaped in a way. Sorry. So. Yeah.
But I mean, they all display great. But
yes.
I think I'm probably more of a fan of the older ones. The softer ones. It might just be my eye, but the older ones seem to be more of a brilliant red rather than I think that later one that I mean, maybe it's just discoloured, I don't know, but the red just doesn't seem as sort of like as bright as the older, the softer ones.
I think they look a little bit crisper as well, particularly on the helmet, the moulding detail. So a little bit more evil maybe.
Yeah. Well, it's what you want for your henchmen, isn't it?
Exactly.
Is there anything you've got your eye on at the moment that you're wanting to pick up?
Not that I've spotted. Well, no, actually, there is. So, Fresh Monkey Fiction have re-released some kind of red shadow figures, I suppose, and I missed out on those when I think the first wave. Although there is wave 2 or wave 3, whatever it is now, I don't know.
Right.
So I missed out on those, unfortunately. So I do keep looking for those. I think there's another wave. I think you just mentioned, a little while ago that there's another wave coming. But I'd like to track down the first wave as well. So I do keep save searches on eBay. Keep looking for those. In terms of stuff I'm keeping an eye out for, there's a few bits. I think the main thing really I'd like. Is I'm looking over there. Sorry, I don't know because that's where it would go. It is a boat patrol, SAS Force boat patrol, in the box. So lots of the Palatoy stuff Some of the smaller sets were released on long cards, big cards. Patrol, the Space Force, Satellite Defense, and they also had boxed releases as well.
Right.
So most of the box releases are kind of obtainable with a bit of patience, or they're quite easy to find depending which way around, which one it is. But the SAS Rogue Patrol is really, really, really hard to find.
Right.
So I'd quite like one of those. Like, having a sealed boxed one would be, beyond, I think, anything popping up. But a loose box would be nice. I think that's one of the main things that I would like to find at some point.
Yeah. That would be. I mean, we can get into it later, but the few Action Force stuff I've got, if I could have boxed versions as well, that would be nice. You can't. There's something about a collectible in its box, that makes it just look real nice. It's nice to have them out on display. Don't get me wrong, but there's something nice as well. And I think it's probably to do with the artwork and the photography on the boxes, because I mean, I just talking from a Transformers point of view, and I suppose the few classified figures that I have, the boxes are all right, but they just seem to be a jumble of images. Whereas the like toy box design back in the day, back in like the 70s and 80s, there was always very clearly on the box what you were getting, kind of thing. And especially some really creative toy photography images on there as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think with Action Force, the coming back to the different boxes, in the bigger box sets, there were sometimes picture box and window box versions. So the window box, obviously, you could see the toy inside. As a kid, that gave you a great idea of what you were getting, I suppose. But the picture box versions do look so much nicer, as far as I'm concerned, anyway. Just those, as you're talking about, that great photography where they've got these shots set up, little Dio shots to show it up to its best potential, best idea, how you might imagine it as a kid, rather than it being trundling in front of your sofa, you've got it in an actual desert, so it looks that way. That kind of but yes, I mean, I suppose kind of modern toy packaging is hampered a little bit with all the languages that have to go on there, all the safety warnings and everything else, I suppose. About some of the Star Wars stuff where I see a few complaints about that.
I think, I don't know, is it maybe we're just smarter back in the day, we didn't put his toys in his mouth.
No.
We're too busy playing with them rather than trying to eat them.
If I shot something in my eye accidentally, I probably would have thought it would be my fault, but yes.
I won't ask you about pre-orders, because I'm getting the idea and the impression that it's not really your kind of thing, pre-orders, for what you pick up and collect. Am I wrong?
Well, no, not really, I suppose, no, because there isn't really, I did collect classified G.I. Joe stuff for a while, so I used to pre-order a few bits through there, but I sold that because there was just no space. I suppose Kickstarter's really, would be the closest thing, I think Total Toy Books, who are releasing another one soon, that kind of, for me, is as pre-ordery as it gets, really, I suppose. There's nothing new coming out apart from those kind of things.
On the lines of like Action Force / G.I. Joe, the stuff that we got over here in the UK, is there anything from that line that you'd like that didn't actually make it into production?
So I suppose I that comes kind of onto my other bit of my collecting, I suppose, really, because
which I'm going to ask you in a moment, so don't spoil it.
Okay, sorry. There is, I suppose, yes. Stuff that I've obviously seen as an adult, that other people have discovered and found and things like that. Yes, like the Red Shadow Officer, the Bombardier from Special Weapons Force, all of those Special Weapons Force things, I would love to have official releases. And I suppose the main thing is the Space Force troop transport, if that's what it was, I guess. Yeah. So those kind of things, I think in terms of the palette, the Hasbro stuff, there isn't really. I I've seen pictures of the kind of train set that didn't really make it. As a kid, I would have loved that. This big train set to put my figures in and trundle around the room. That would have been awesome.
Yeah.
But I think as far as pre-production stuff, or stuff we didn't get, sorry, should I say, Palatoy is really kind of where it sits with me, I guess. Those kind of things, those figures that we didn't get, those ideas, unfortunately, just didn't make it past someone's tick box or checkbook or whatever it would be.
Yeah. Right. So now here's the question, which I've been looking forward to, and I hope you have too. But because this question's right up your alley, actually. If you could design your own toy, what would it be? Or should I say, if you could, have you designed your own toy, and what was it?
Well, I suppose I would quite, if I don't come on to the stuff that I've just mentioned, obviously, in terms of the things we didn't get, it was a brand new idea, I suppose, it's not very original, but I guess it would just be stuff that expands on, my main thing, like a Red Shadow troop transporter, for example. We didn't get anything of that. I think kind of Red Shadow, I suppose, were a little bit poorly served. They had the Robo Skull, which is amazing, obviously. But, a troop transport. Hyena, awesome. Escape armor, amazing. Love the escape armor. But yeah, some kind of a troop transport vehicle like the ATC that we got for the ATC, depending where you're from, for Z Force, that kind of thing, something like that. I suppose maybe I'm not very good at thinking of totally original ideas when I come up with things I'd like to design or customs I'd like to think of. More kind of, seeing what didn't make it, didn't get into production, and kind of just ideas and little switcheroos around and things of what we got and variants of it, I suppose.
Right. So, if people aren't already aware, do you want to explain and just tell us a bit about, your route into customizing? What it was that guided you down that route, and to do some of the, I'm not blowing smoke up your ass here, Matt. I do genuinely mean it. Some of the customized stuff that you've done, it's done some really good stuff. So it's like, what were it that guided you on that route to that thing?
I suppose seeing what I think as a kid, I kind of had a bit of an attempt at it, whereas nowadays it's all about turning things red for Baby and Red Shadow things. As a kid, I was kind of around for the Cobra takeover of the Red Shadows, really, I suppose, or the turn into Cobra, or Cobra appearing and the Red Shadows disappearing, depending what kind of lore you follow. So I had a Robo Skull as a kid, and I painted it blue. So it was a Cobra one, which obviously, nowadays that would be crazy. That would be a very valuable thing to paint. But I had some blue Humbrol paint. I don't know whether I went out and bought it or whether I had it from a model kit or something. I decided to paint it blue, and it looked awful. But I was quite proud of it as a kid, I suppose, of dust all over it, I guess, from the painting. But when I got back into collecting a little bit more as an adult, as the internet came along and kind of got more developed. I guess it's seeing what other people were doing, I suppose. I thought about collecting. I'd not really thought about making things, which I quite like doing. So it just seemed a route in, where you've got these things and you can turn one thing into another just by changing the colour and adding a few stickers and things like that. And that to me seemed quite exciting, and it was quite a nice creative outlet, rather than just having to spend money and buy more toys or look at toys that you can't afford. You could get cheap toys, you could get things in the same scale that weren't Action Force originally. Just get a bit of paint and make it into a new vehicle that that didn't exist, or that you wanted to exist as a kid, I suppose. And then I can remember having a conversation with someone at work actually about 3D printing, when it kind of in its very, very early stages of infancy, before it became kind of a consumer or a prosumer thing. and just being amazed by it. And as soon as I saw that, I thought of the kind of the implications for my collecting and customizing. And as soon as they became kind of a thing you could buy and get working as a kind of normal average person in the street, then I bought, what I could afford, really. I suppose the nicest thing I could afford at the time. And since that point, that's kind of developed a little bit. And it's just a massive, massive help. So, rather than having to find things, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with this at all. Sorry, I don't mean that for anybody who does that. I still do this in terms of finding things and just painting things. You can just add extra little bits to it. You can redesign it. You can have things totally from scratch if you like. So some of the figures that didn't make it out as a kid, like the Red Shadow Officer, I've been able to design my own version of it, print them, and you can have it sat next to your figures. And hopefully, in my eyes at least, I'm sure obviously everyone has their own little idea of what fits and doesn't fit in terms of customs, I suppose. But to me, it sits along nicely with the original figures. So it just expands the ranks a little bit. So, if you've got space on your shelf, I don't have to, add another Red Shadow. I can add a different figure, a different character, not only ones that you didn't get that were pre-production stuff that didn't make it, but you've got a massive library of characters from Battle Action Force comics. There are huge numbers of characters in there that would come in and get killed instantly or within a few pages or whatever it was, that might appear for a story or something, in some great stories. So there's a massive library of characters you can create just with a simple head swap and an arm swap. So, that kind of thing.
There was, I think I saw it on your Instagram. I can't think how long ago it is now, but it was the Skeletron and Muton R2D2 homage.
I did that just recently for May the 4th. Sorry, yes. Trying to forget what day it was then.
That I saw that and I thought that's awesome. Is that I really did like it. It's very clever, very clever.
I do. Thank you. I do like. It does. Hopefully, in an amusing way, wind a few people up when I do the Action 4th crossover. When it's going to be May the 4th, I pretend it's Action 4th Day. So I do like to kind of try and make that a thing. It's not a thing. I know it's not a thing, but I try and make it a thing.
I think I've done it. I think I've done it myself once or twice. Your Action 4th kind of thing. But so no, because like I say, I wanted to. To touch on that because I know, following you on Instagram like I've been for a while, I've seen, all these customs and things come up, and, some of the variants, colour schemes you've done on the Skeletrons and things like that look really nice. And, you mentioned the Red Shadow Officer, and the accessories and things like that, it's, there's some like additional parts, replacement parts for, for vehicles and stuff. I mean, how do you... just diverting slightly from us, from the question kind of thing. But how have you found that kind of thing's been received by the collecting community? Because I know that, like within the Star Wars community, there's a big chunk of people that just don't like and won't accept, reproduction or replacement parts and things like that. But how do you find it's received within, the Action Force community?
I think it's generally okay. I think Star Wars, as you say, it's very, very polarized. There's kind of very vocal group of people that are anti it, very vocal group of people that are pro it, and it kind of gets very heated, I suppose, at times. In Action Force, there are people that tend to not like it, and it's not a criticism. It's not for everybody. It's if you don't want that if you want everything original, that's perfect. But I think in Star Wars, it's kind of a little bit different because, and I'm not trying to advocate one way or the other. You either like it or you don't. I don't want to argue and try and convince people. Sorry, but I suppose in Star Wars, if you wanted a piece and you have the money, you could buy that piece pretty easily. I think you might have a little bit of struggle tracking it down, but you're going to be able to find it at some point for a price. For Action Force, though, for example, if you want an ATC aerial, you're not going to be able to find one. I've come across, I think, 3 in 15 years or something like that. You know,
Right.
there are other bits you just won't be able to find, and now it's even, I think, not worse but harder to find things. You know, you go on eBay, and eBay now is just really, I suppose, a whole list of buy it now things that, you know, there's no auction. Generally, everything has a price, and sometimes those buy it nows can be quite high compared to, you know, maybe reflective of prices a few years ago or something. So I just, you know, I don't like the idea that if I haven't, or someone hasn't got the money to spend on something, or they're struggling to find it, that they shouldn't be able to complete their toy and have it looking like they were as a kid, I suppose.
Yeah.
So that's my take on it, and I think most people in the Action Force world are kind of okay with it. You know, if they don't like it, they just don't comment on it, but they don't want to cause a fuss in the nicest way, you know?
Right, yeah.
And I tend to, you know, I kind of be respectful of that, you know, so like the Action Force Facebook groups, the main two really, I suppose, that I'm on, I don't post stuff there for sale, for example. I don't go, hey, here's a new reproduction part that I've designed and printed that you can buy. I stay away from that. It may be that I'll post it in the background of a picture, not to try and get around that, but just it might be that I'll post a picture of something and it's there, but not point out or anything else like that, not to try and sneak around any people's thoughts. And I just kind of keep to myself on Instagram with it, I suppose, and then put it on eBay and Etsy when I've got some ready. There is a custom group that I'll do it in, but that is specifically about customs. And you know, I guess most people in the Star Wars world, I suppose, if you don't like reproduction, you probably don't like custom things as well, because you don't like the idea of those toys being painted. Which, again, I don't have a, you know, it's not a trying to convince people or sway people's, you know, thoughts on it. It's just that's, you know, that's how people are.
I mean,
it's your collection, it's your little world that you have, I suppose.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There are some, you know, fantastic customs, you know, out there. I mean, is it a couple of years back now? Yes, I think it's a couple of years back. I spoke to Dave Gillis, Palatine Fantastic.
Amazing.
And, you know, and he's got some great custom stuff, and you know, and I mean, he did the book, you know, and you know, the photography in there, you know, it's great stuff, and I think that, you know, I think certain aspects of collecting community do these creatives a bit of a disservice, really, by not showcasing what they do, you know, because you know, there's some great stuff. I mean, I think, you know, it wasn't Dave that did it, and I don't know who did it, but there was I remember seeing someone had customised an AT-AT, so it was like part of the Red Shadows Force.
That was Dark Horse Marcus.
Right.
He made a little while ago. Yes, that's awesome.
Yeah, that looks great. And then there was another chap who'd got, I can't remember. I can't remember. I was just about to say it. I think it's a relatively newish toy line that produces vehicles that all fit 3 3/4 scale figures, but it was some kind of propeller bomber. But then they'd put the Robo Skull face to the front of this bomber.
I know which. I know which one you mean. It's I can't remember the name of the person who made it though. I think I think it was on the American groups. I saw it, and then I thought I think it made it onto the British groups. I think obviously, can't remember the person's name. Sorry.
Yeah, but you know, so yeah, there's some fantastic work out there, and like I say, I think, you know, that you know, that kind of thing needs to, because it's only enhancing what you've already got. You know.
Yeah, I think, you know, if we were going to come back to David, who, you know, I consider him, you know, a good friend in the community. You know, hopefully feels the same way about me if he hears this. But you know, if he was doing the same thing with Star Wars, he would probably have to be selective about where he would be able to post that stuff. You know, he'd have to choose. You know, he'd get kicked off certain groups if he was going to post it in a certain group. You know, you'd have to pick and choose as to where you were showing it, which, you know, and again, I don't mean that to be suggesting that everyone should accept it and everyone should love it and be happy with it, but it's what I like about the Action Force world, is that you have to be less careful about things, that, you know, you can chop up a figure, you can paint it a different color, you can turn it into something else, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And no one will, complain, I suppose.
Yeah. Is there anything, like I have here, like I'll just put a piece up every now and again and things like that. But is there a particular piece at the moment that you're gravitating towards, that like you just keep picking up and having a bit of a play around with, and that I use the word vibing. Is there something that you're vibing on at the moment?
I didn't want to say this once. It sounds like I'm showing off a little bit, and I don't mean it that way. But in the room that I'm in at the minute, I'm kind of having a massive rearrange. Although the shelves are all staying where they are, I've got a USS flag. So
excellent.
I hated it. I don't hate it, obviously, but I was really happy to get it because I had one, I sold it, I regretted it, so I got another one that was nicer, much nicer condition. Much more complete. So I had it, and then I tried it in various spots around the room, and then wherever I put it, it just seems to take over the room because it's so huge. It is big.
How big actually is it?
I think it's at 9.5, 7.5 feet. I mean, I could. Sorry, the laptop's on it. That's why I'm looking kind of.
Oh no, it's okay. No, it's okay.
I'm trying to gauge it. I think just by looking at it, and I think it's about 7.5 feet long. I think from end to end.
Right. Yeah, that's a big chunk of toy.
It is, and it was in the middle of the room here-ish, and it kind of covered. You walk into the room and you couldn't see what was behind it, really. I suppose. So I was thinking about selling it, and then I moved it because I'm in an attic room. I've got a stairway coming up that direction, I suppose, against the window, and it's kind of against that stairway now as it enters the room. So I think I'm a little bit happier with it. So I'm kind of loving it a little bit more at the minute. So I'm giving it some TLC. I've got some replacement stickers for it because some of the deck stickers are a little bit worn. Right. So I think, yes, I tried to avoid saying it because I didn't want it to be a bit like a show-off thing, but I'm kind of liking it a lot more now. And I think. So
how's the? I mean, I've only ever seen one in pictures, and I've never seen one, boxed, if you will. So I mean, how's the physicality, the construction of it work? Is it like a modular toy? So do you have to like snap and put it together? And is it quite sturdy once it's built up?
The main section of it is, yes, it is. Yeah, there's kind of 3 bits of, or 4, sorry, I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 3 deck plates, really, I suppose, that slot over the hull. That is pretty sturdy. It's the kind of the little small bits as you get into the main superstructure, I think it's called on a aircraft carrier. Sorry if that's the right way. But yeah, the superstructure, I think, where you put your figures and you play, really, I suppose. So it is quite delicate there, and it's actually, I can see it as a kid being a lot of fun to play with. I think I've had a Terradrome in the past, and that, although it looks awesome and it was amazing, it just becomes like a big kind of a storage bin, really, I suppose. There's not I don't know, as a kid probably you would have got a lot of play value out of it, but I think with the flag, if you were a kid and you had that as a kid, I can't imagine anybody I knew that had the room to display it all the time. It would have been up and down, so you probably would have ruined it by the amount of times you'd have to take it up and down every weekend or whatever you'd have to do. But you could fly your planes off it. You've got all the space around it, everything around it to play with it. As a kid, I think it would have been an amazing toy.
Yeah, and is it all plastic, or does it incorporate like cardboard pieces? Like the Action Force Defence, is it Defence Base or something like?
The cardboard HQ.
Yeah.
No, it's all plastic. All plastic.
Right.
So yeah, most of it's just typical hard plastic. Really, I suppose there is a piece that sits along one side of it to make it look like it's got a hull underneath the deck. That's kind of some softer plastic, really, so it's still quite floppy and a little bit delicate. But no, all plastic. So all and all the superstructure really in the wrong colour for it to be. It's kind of that light grey that easily yellows, really, I suppose.
Right,
yeah.
Yeah, no, I get you. Yeah. What was the What was the last figure that you encountered or you saw, or even vehicle or whatever, that just like really impressed you? You know, you just thought, I mean, and it doesn't have to be something you have, but you know, just something you've come across and you thought, yeah, that's a really good piece.
I think sorry, it's still connected with Action Force, really, I suppose. But I think I saw the classified Panther.
Right.
And although I don't collect classified anymore, I did really, really, really want one because it just looks quite cool. You know, I suppose outside of the hobby, I still look at Star Wars, Lego, everything, you know, things that come out. Like Star Wars, I like Lego, and I kind of look at those, you know, they do those smaller scale big ships. You know, you can get like the Star Destroyer, I think, in kind of like that sort of scale, and the Venator, those kind of things. I keep seeing those popping up, you know, when I wander past them in Sainsbury's or whatever it would be. I keep seeing those, and I keep looking at them longingly a little bit.
Yeah,
just no space.
yeah. So moving on with questions, this is the one that I changed, and it's now it's like you're on a desert island. What piece you having with you? What figure or vehicle, or you know, just whatever, you know, what you're taking with you to keep you company?
It's got to be a Kraken, hasn't it? You know, I think when you know you like that desert island thing, like desert island discs, I always imagine those little ones that you'd see in the newspaper cartoons where you've just got this little tiny island with one palm tree or something on.
Yeah.
It's a little bit bigger than that, maybe, I don't know. But yeah, a Kraken, you know, just to pose him, having, you know, swimming out the sea, messing about, that kind of thing, I suppose. Yeah.
Actually, and if nothing else, you could go out and catch fishes for you.
Exactly. Yeah.
Keep you fed.
No, got the right shaped net with the right.
I mean, yeah, the Kraken. I mean, it is a lovely little figure. Is the Kraken? I mean, I do like it, I'm going back to. I liked those customs you did, where it's got the body of Bosk. You know, the space suit. That was a nice variant, I must admit. What I will ask you is though, because I don't know if I can't recall if I asked Dave this question. I'd have to go back and watch to reacquaint myself, but. I'm probably wrong, but would I be right or wrong in thinking, you know, the skull here for the enemy logo, is that a Kraken skull?
I don't think it is. No, I think there was someone who suggested it,
right?
As a thing that, you know, I think someone suggested it, and I don't think there's anything ever that's been able to back it up.
Right.
I don't think Bob's ever. I think Bob might have just confirmed it was just a skull. You know, I think that's all it was really. I suppose it just looks quite cool, skull and crossbones. Yeah. Pirates. You know, I think some people have made connections to the Zargon logo or Zargonite, logo from Action Force, Vintage Action Man. Should I say?
Yeah.
Where there's similarities there with their logo, so maybe it was just a kind of an updated version of that.
Right.
I suppose. Yeah. I mean, I don't. You know, everyone's entitled to their own ideas. I don't mean to be saying, you know, but I quite like the idea of it just being a skull, I guess, really.
Yeah. It just made me wonder because, like I said, when you look at it, it's a similar facial shape, and obviously then it's like the ridge thing at the top, you know, where obviously.
No, I get it. But if we got one that was turned around a little bit, maybe if we'd have seen the snout, it'd have confirmed it.
Yeah. So but no, I just thought I'd throw that one in there. You briefly touched on it, but I mean, I don't know if you want to elaborate here. But I was going to ask if there's, other than Action Force, is there anything out of Action Force that interests you that you maybe pick up from time to time?
Not in terms of toys, no. Although I still see things, you know, I mentioned like I like, and I kind of like the idea of the only thing. No, I do. The one thing I do have is some Star Wars Black Series.
Right.
I limit myself to Rogue One. Excuse me. Rogue One's my favourite Star Wars movie.
Right.
And then I think I was watching Andor Series 2, and that kind of got me thinking. So I kind of looked up, and there were some quite cheap Rogue One character figures from Black Series. So in the hobby room downstairs, I've got maybe about 15 or 20, and it's grown a little bit because it's not direct Rogue One characters now. So I mean, Darth Vader, I've got a Darth Vader. He was in it just for a little bit at the end, wasn't he? Really? During as well. So yeah, that's the only other thing, and I think I'd like. Hopefully they'll do some more. Hopefully we can add more Radis in the 6-inch scale, a few other characters and stuff. So that'd be quite nice.
Yeah.
I think the only other thing really similar, I suppose, it's not toys, is Doctor Who.
Okay.
So a big Doctor Who fan. I used to be massive when I was kind of teenager. So I still collect the Blu-ray releases that come out. They're amazing. So they come out every few months with a different season. And I still would like to finish off my New Adventures book series. I think there were 50 in total of the New Adventures. I've got maybe half of them, so I'd quite like to do those and get them completed. But yeah, the only thing really, I let myself collect books.
Yeah.
It's quite dangerous, I suppose. Otherwise, my other half will be complaining at me. She's got her few bits that she likes to collect, but when stuff starts to encroach too much in the living room, then it's
yeah. So, are you? Had you been on board with the Big Finish stuff then on the Doctor Who side?
I've listened to a few. So I think spare parts. I think if you've listened to many of them, so spare parts, the Cyberman story. I've listened to that, and I've listened to the Jago and Lightfoot stuff. They were really good. Yeah, I think however many seasons there were of those. I'd like to listen to them and do a run, but I think it's a little bit like a podcast, like some of the podcasts where they've got so many episodes, you kind of either, I suppose lots of people do, they just dip in and just listen to what they like. Right. The collector thing in me, I suppose, makes me want to listen to them all in order, but then it just becomes too overwhelming, and there's just, there's hundreds of them now, aren't there, I suppose, of the Big Finish?
I would assume so, yeah. I mean, it's not something I've got into myself, but I know that they are out there and that. So would you say on the Doctor Who side then, are you more of a classic Who, or do you dip your toe in both waters?
I am more classic, yes, but I don't want to be one of those, talking about kind of polarizing fandoms. Doctor Who is probably one of the most polarizing fandoms that I know of. I do like some of this later stuff, so really, really enjoyed, all of it up until, I say enjoyed all of it. There were some episodes that you like thinking, well, this isn't so great, but that's just the same with classic Who. Up until Capaldi, and then I started to stop watching it, really, I suppose, and then I caught up with the Jodie Whittaker stuff, and some of that was really good. I've not watched any of the Ncuti Gatwa stories recently, the last series that finished, but I'll give them a watch at some point. I just think, yes, more of a classic bent to it, but even then I recognise that some of the classic stuff was not very good at all, just like some of the modern stuff isn't not very good at all, really, I suppose. Yeah. I can't, but then, Sylvester McCoy and Patrick Troughton and Pertwee are kind of my favourite classic Doctors, so they span quite a different era, I suppose, between the one end to the other. It's quite different eras there. I mean, you could almost say there's an argument to say that there's kind of not just classic, there's kind of obviously cut-offs within the classic era when it starts to change quite a lot, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I can remember as a kid, when Sylvester McCoy took over.
Yeah.
And it was like, I mean, I'd been watching, I caught probably the arse end of Tom Baker.
Yeah.
Because I can remember watching, and then when he regenerated into Peter Davidson. And even now, I'm like, what's that? Who's that ghost figure that's, what's all that about? It's like, but anyway, so like, I did arse into Tom Baker through Peter Davidson, and then Colin Baker, and, and that. And it's like, well, but then when he got to Sylvester McCoy, I was kind of like, he's a bit mean. He's a bit kind of like, he's a bit harsh. He's and it didn't stop me watching, but I must admit, I didn't end up watching all the Sylvester McCoy stuff.
No.
Whether or not that was an age thing, because, like getting a bit older at that point or what, I don't know. But, so there probably is quite a bit of a chunk of Sylvester McCoy stuff that I've not seen,
but yeah. Stuff is really, really good. I think some of the earlier stuff it's enjoyable. I don't mean to knock it or anything else, but some of the later stuff, you really felt like the show was getting back into its stride again.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of makes me McCoy one of my favourite ones, and also the New Adventures that I read as well. As a teenager, I think that kind of whole thing just adds to my thoughts on it, I suppose.
Yeah. Okay, moving on. Well, actually, no, we're moving on because we went. This is the part now where I'm going to ask you about stuff in the past. So we know Action Force, GI Joe kind of is there, but I mean, are there? Is there other things that's making up, your playtime as a kid? And, are there any particular favourites within that stand out?
Lego was one of them, I suppose. Like lots of kids of a certain age, I had the Lego space kind of, I don't know what the official name for it was, but it was like a moon base or whatever it was. So you had a little control centre, little monorail going to the space spaceship, and that could fly off. That that used to spend an awful lot of time playing with that. Crossbows and catapults as well was kind of a thing as well for me.
Yeah,
didn't really, because it was a game, I think, wasn't it? I think
it was a board game. Yeah, with crossbows and catapults. Yeah,
but I never really played it as the game, so I just used to make up the little castle. You had the towers and you had the blocks you could put together, and just kind of batter it with the Cyclops, wasn't he, with the lobbed things, and then you had the crossbow.
So I can vaguely remember the advert. I can see the advert for it, and the kids like pressing the thing, and were they like little black plastic balls or ball bearings or something like that? Were they marbles?
Were they discs? I think that you had like blue and red discs. I'm not saying the ones I remember. I think, but I'm not saying that wasn't the. I'm sure there were kind of various different sets you could get.
Right.
But yeah, just remember that, and I think the other thing were Stompers and Rough Riders. I don't know if you remember those. Yes. Sorry. So Rough Riders I didn't like quite as much because I think they were the ones that had the big gear sticks on the top.
Yeah, the gear stick at the top. Yeah, they did. Yeah,
and they always made it look a bit unrealistic. Well, obviously a lot unrealistic, really. So it's a massive gear stick going out the top of the truck, but a little bit unrealistic for me. So the Stompers, I think, were a little bit more realistic. So they just had a little switch underneath.
Right. Yes, they did. Yes.
Yeah, and I think there was a water one. I still got a water one now, and there was a tank bridge set as well, where then you had a tank and some little soldiers as well going over a bridge.
Right.
And then the bridge made its way into Action Force, obviously, because it was all Action Force. So even though it was completely out of scale with everything, it was far too tiny. You could still drive a Jeep over it, so it was fine. It became a thing with that.
Yeah, I saw a picture because I was actually thinking of Rough Riders not long back.
Yeah.
And I did the usual thing, when something comes into your head, you go and have a little quick look on Google and stuff like that. And because the one I had as a kid, I had the Knight Rider and the 18 van.
Yeah.
Them two as a kid. Now, it was odd because when I found the pictures on Google, I thought they don't look right. They don't look like my memory of them.
Yeah.
And the disparity was that the ones I had as a kid, they had a little stick out the top, but it had like a gear knob on top of it, like a little silver gear knob on top. Yeah. And all the photos I found, they didn't have a gear knob. Anyway, and I was thinking, right, was I dropped as a kid or something? Am I not remembering something right here? Anyway, I kept looking, and I did eventually find them with the gear knob. So whether or not there was two different releases of them of what, I don't know, because some of the images I found where they didn't have a knob on the gear stick were sealed on card. So I must assume that maybe either the gear knob version was before the latter one or what, I don't know. Because the reason why I remember it so vividly is because you'd have to pull you have to excuse my language here, but you'd have to pull the knob off to be able to get the top off to change the batteries. And then put it all back together again. So, but yeah. And then you mentioned the crossbows and catapults. I had a similar game that I did the same thing with. It was called Lost Valley of the Dinosaurs. It was an old Waddington's game.
I was just wondering if you were going to say that when you were saying that. I was thinking, I wonder if he's going to mention the dinosaur. I had the dinosaur game as well, yeah.
And as a kid, I never played it properly. I just used to play with the volcano and the dinosaurs and stuff like that. But recently, I mean, it's been a while now, but when my kids got a bit older, we started playing it properly, and it's a really, really good game.
Oh, that's okay. That's good. I thought I was wondering if you were going to say it was amazing or if it was really rubbish or something.
No, it's a really, really good game. It's a really good strategy game, and depending, there's like 2 different games within it. So there's like a short game or there's a strategy game. So there's a lot of thought that's gone into it. So
little tiny plastic human figures as well, weren't there?
Yes. Yeah. So you have 4 teams, and each team has 4 explorers.
Okay.
So like the short game, you just play with 1, and then you have to get to the temple, get the gold, and bring it back. Where the long game, you play with your 4 figures, and you have to get all 4 there and back, kind of thing.
There's a temple in it as well. Like I think you just remind. Yes,
cardboard temple, and you've got like the gold discs is the treasure, and then you've got
reminded me. Yeah,
the red lava pieces that you put that come down the volcano and that. So it was fantastic game. I did the same thing with that. So with view to, while you sat playing with your toys and that, what cartoons you're watching, TV shows, and did you also dabble in comics?
I didn't dabble in comics until, no, I don't. I had Oink. I had the Beano. So I can remember one day, I think my brother and sister, I don't know, maybe my brother and sister suggested to my mum that I should have a comic. So I was able to have a weekly comic from the newsagents, and that was the Beano. So I had that. Yeah. I think I wished I'd have picked the Dandy. Right. Because I used to go to my cousins and my aunties and cousins, and they had, a bookcase full of old Dandy comics. Annuals and Beano annuals. And I think I always preferred the Dandy ones. I'd always go to the Dandy one. But I had the Beano. And then I had Oink for a little while when that came out. I didn't have that for very long. And then it was all about computer magazines. Yeah. So I had a Spectrum, so I'd have Sinclair User, I'd get Your Sinclair, I might get Crash occasionally. Yeah. See what was on the cover tape. That's Spectrum, probably really exciting.
So I think I've heard of a Spectrum. It sounds a bit familiar.
Comics, there wasn't really a thing. And then I did get the Action Force comics while I was getting Action Force. But I suppose it was always kind of a chunk of pocket money. So, your comic might be 50p for an Action Force comic. I think they were for that weekly run. But you'd get maybe £1 comic pocket money a week. So that was always kind of half of it's gone there. And what am I going to do? Yeah. But in TV shows, I was always a CBBC watcher. Or children's BBC, I think maybe, rather than CITV. So I used to like those, the long-running kind of cartoon sagas. You'd have like Mysterious Cities of Gold. Yeah. D'Artagnan was another one, a kind of a different thing, like Willy Fogg, those kind of things. Yeah. They just used to seem to stretch on forever. Yeah. But then other things I, look and read, I remember not from home life, but from school, the Dark Towers you can read and The Boy from Space. There are the things that kind of stuck with me. That's kind of another bit of nostalgia that I like to do, kind of watch those old shows that I watched as a kid and see how they stand up, I guess. But then I carried on, like watching kids' TV, probably when, it was just a habit that I'd still come home from the sixth form or college and still go and watch kids' TV. So, I'd be watching stuff that was probably a little bit, like The Demon Headmaster or Uncle Jack was another one that I used to love as a kid. It doesn't really seem to get remembered very much now. Right. That was quite good. Yeah. Right.
No, good stuff. Yeah, you mentioned the magazines and that. I wasn't big on the computer magazines. I picked up one or two. I tend to pick them up when there was like cover tapes. Yeah. Because it's always worth getting a free game I think the best one I ever got, and it was pretty latish on it, maybe about 87, 88, I think it was. And it was a Your Sinclair, and it was People from Sirius.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, which was a cracking game. It was a US Gold game.
Yeah.
And they just decided, it's a full, you want a demo, it was actually a full game, the original game. And they just released it as a free game with the magazine. And it's quite a good game. It's quite a good game. But, but I think it's because there was so many, you had Crash, your Sinclair User, computer and video game, there was just so many. And, there was something about them all that made them appealing, but it was just it was cost prohibitive to just get them all.
It was.
Yeah.
It was, yeah. And then towards the end, I suppose, when people stopped buying the Spectrum ones particularly, you'd get kind of the cover tapes would get fuller and fuller of different games, but then the magazine would be shrinking in size, less and less coverage of stuff. It was all about just, I suppose, lots of people just buying it for the tape, really, I suppose, for the games.
I mean, in hindsight now, I wish I had have picked up the Crash magazine, just if for nothing else but the artwork.
Yes, yeah.
The artwork was always stunning on the Crash magazines, and so much so that I get the Crash Micro magazine. I sign up for that.
Yeah. There is it's not probably in the same kind of level of artwork for some of the stuff, but there is a Crash magazine with an Action Force cover for one of the Action Force games, which I've got, which is quite cool. I have the Action Force game, but it's really Action Force in name only, really, because it is based on the G.I. Joe characters. I think it's Flint that's on there, and I think you play as Snake Eyes in it and that. So it's, it's more really it's a G.I. Joe game. It's not an Action Force game, sadly. Yeah.
But you did get, but again, it was the same with the Transformer comic. You got Action Force in there, but in name only, because, like I say, it was the UK names for the American characters.
Yes, I think at that point when they were in the Transformers one, that was just reprints of the US stories, whereas when it was in its own, you'd get UK stories and you'd get some reprints as well. So there's still an awful lot I need to track down of those, the Transformers and Action Force comics, really, I suppose. Kind of trying to complete the run.
Yeah. So, good stuff. Birthday, Christmas, got any, standout memories of like toys and that it was like, wow, can't believe I've got that kind of thing, I
think, so as a kid, it was always, Christmas was the big thing.
Yeah.
So, I don't mean to say my mum and dad were mean, obviously they weren't at all in any way, but, during the year, you'd maybe get the odd thing if you were out. We grew up in a small town, so you might go to the big town to do some shopping. So you might, if you're lucky, get a figure or something like that, or a car, a Matchbox car or something like that, something small.
That's just how it was. We didn't get spoiled. It was just like
no, not at all. And then my birthday was kind of like you get something a little bit bigger. So if I was going to say in the Action Force world, I suppose you might get a Stinger Jeep or something. So that would be like £15, whatever it was, or the retail, whatever it was, something like that. But then Christmas was always the big thing. So, Christmas was when they went all out, and, there's three of us, my brother and my sister. We'd always get a little bit spoiled at that time of year, I suppose, which was amazing. So that, just those lots of happy memories there. But I think the biggest one in my collecting thing I can remember is that I'd obviously been buying the Palitoy stuff as clearance, really, in the main, and then Hasbro came along with their version of Action Force. So I can remember seeing that W.H. Smith. So I picked up Airtight, was my first Hasbro figure, and I was just amazed by it. Just looked all the accessories, all the the joints on the figures, the sculpt. Although we'd had like Red Laser before, the sculpt was just like next level, really, I suppose, and kind of detail. So I was all about that then. That was amazing because I could find new stuff. There was new stuff on the shelves. And then, so one Christmas, I'd got my toys, I got the presents, everything was amazing, happy with everything. And then after we'd opened everything, they kind of went behind the sofa and pulled out this big box. As a kid, it felt huge. And it was the transportable tactical battle platform, the kind of the oil rig type thing in the Hasbro. Which, it just blew my mind. So I think that probably, that was a massive surprise. You think you're done, and then you get this big box pulled out that it's not like the biggest box you'd ever seen in the world for a toy at the time.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds a great thing. For a moment, then I thought you were going to say something like, what was its name? Is it Defiant?
Yeah. I think that'd have been bigger than our sofa. I think maybe the box of that.
Yeah, that is a huge. I mean, I've seen that in the box, know, and so like obviously, I thought that's big, but then like you talk about the USS Flag, and it's like
Next level.
huge stuff. But I mean, I suppose that's reflective as well. I mean, it's not. I mean, you maybe correct me if I'm wrong here, but when I say that I've seen the Defiant in the box, it wasn't back in the day. It was more recently kind of thing. But was that and the Flag ever made available for retail over here, or were they toys that collectors have picked up later as imports kind of thing?
I think in terms of the Flag, I think there were definitely more over here that were here at the time than some people will probably realise.
Right.
So I think the one I've got at the minute was a US source because the guy I bought it from and had it shipped over here. The one before that I had was a UK source. That was a competition win. So I think the Flag and the Defiant both had, and I've got some leaflets for the Flag that you collected. So department stores. So I suppose that as a kid, those large department stores like. What was the one in Bournemouth that I used to remember? Sorry, I can't remember. I worked for a firm that used to supply them as well. I can't remember any names. But, those big department stores that would have toy departments in them, they were given as competition prizes to some of those stores. Right. So as a kid, you could go in. I think the Defiant was the same way. You could, if you were lucky enough, win a Flag or a Defiant. Right. Probably hang it out on display in the window with it all set up, for you to goggle at and be amazed by. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. I don't think anyone knows the true answer, but I suspect, given how many there are and how many I've seen who say they're from UK sources, there must have either been a lot of those competition wins, which I guess at the time, there were a lot of department stores and large toy stores that would have had them. Or maybe it was just an unofficial thing. If they're sending some over, Hasbro might have big customers that would be interested in buying them, so maybe they did in an unofficial way. It wasn't ever part of the catalogue or anything else like that. Yeah, but they did sell a few of them.
I think what's the just know is it like what was it now? Green. I think we just call it like grey import or I think grey imports or green imports.
Yes, yeah. I mean, if they were sending over, I don't know, however many for competition prizes, then maybe it would have been worthwhile having a few more shipped over and just offering them to sale, I guess.
Yeah. So, do you have any? This is also because like a lot of people don't tend to remember, or it just bleeds into other things. But can you remember? Like a last toy, was there a definitive cut off before moving on? Was can you remember a toy around that area, or did you just did it just bleed into something else and then just carry on in a different way?
No, it still sticks with me a little bit. So my dad worked for an engineering firm, so he had kind of suffered a bit of hearing loss. So as a kid, he kind of got some money on a couple of occasions, and I think regularly that he used to get some money every month for it. So when on those two occasions, I think we all as kids got, I think it was £50. Right. Obviously, that was a massive amount of money for me as a kid at that stage. More money than I'd ever seen in my life. So, I can remember with the first time I got it, I was allowed to spend some of it on a toy. Obviously I wasn't allowed to just fritter it away on whatever I wanted, buy a load of sweets with it, I had to save some of it. But I went and got the Rattler from Argos, the G.I. Joe, I would say Action Force, but Hasbro Rattler. Yeah. That was amazing. And then the second time it happened, I went, because I only lived in a small town, so it was Woolworths or Argos that we had, and it was only a little one of those regional Argoses, smaller ones. I can't remember, they used to have a separate name back then. And I bought the Havoc. Right. So the Hasbro Havoc, which it was the biggest thing, I suppose. I should have got the Sky Striker, really, I suppose, because that thing was available still at the time. And I went and got it, I was allowed to buy it. My mum knew what I was doing, so I went and got it one Saturday morning. Went back to the car after we'd done the shopping, and I think I kind of was feeling super pleased with myself. So I've got this lovely thing, and she said to me, aren't you getting a bit old for toys now? And it was just kind of really just. She didn't mean it in a mean way. I think she was just trying to be helpful. Well, she was. Yeah. She wasn't mean, obviously, but I think it just cut through me. Right. Really cut through me that I was kind of past it at that point, and I think that was the very last thing I bought. Right. So I didn't buy anything after that point, I suppose, and I kind of wanted to. It didn't stop me wanting to. I just think the disapproval I thought I'd face from my mum or dad, probably my friends at that point as well, just kind of made me think, no, this probably need to be, I don't know, buying records or whatever I should have bought, or or something, I suppose. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, it's a great toy to be one of your last.
It is, yeah. I mean, it did take the shine off it a little bit, but that's that's just me and how I react to it a little bit, I suppose.
So, do you still have any of these toys from childhood then?
No. Everything I've got, the only thing I have from childhood is my mum and dad came over a few years ago. They'd been sorting out the loft on where they live, and they brought over some bits of paperwork that I had, like some piano certificates, some pictures, school reports. Right. I should stop being distracted by small toys when I'm at school, that sort of thing. Mrs. Hand, thanks very much, Mrs. Hand. You were great. Yeah. But there was, I don't know if you remember, there's a big poster, a Steel Brigade poster. Right. That it was kind of like a checklist thing. So it had a Steel Brigade character in the middle and then all the characters and little things. So you could use a little checklist. So that I think, one of the ways you could get that was by joining Steel Brigade, by sending away the usual thing they got you into, collecting things and signing up and sending off, and you got a figure and a record and a letter and a club membership and stuff. I don't think I got it that way because I didn't get any of the other stuff. So I think that must have come. I don't know. I don't think it came with a comic. So I think maybe it just must have been that obviously Hasbro gave some of these posters to stores to give away if you bought a figure or you bought whatever it was. I can only see that's how I would have got it. So that is the only thing I have, I think. Looking around, so again, I don't think there's anything else I've got from a kid, just that one poster.
No. I have, me personally, I have a few stuff left from when I was a kid, but it's all kind of really random stuff. That I kept for one reason or another, but again, it was in storage in my mum and dad's loft kind of thing, and then it came back out. Transformer wise, the only one I've got left that I had as a kid is Bumblebee, and that's it. Just a little mini bot. All the others were done up, tarted up, and sold to then fund starting collecting again and things like that. But yeah, the old style toy department stores and things like that, that's where, when I was a kid, I would walk past and I'd see all the Action Force stuff. And it was always, I mean, don't get me wrong, I mean, I used to love sitting in the toy aisles and just staring at all the toys and things like that as a kid, imagine playing with them or having them kind of thing. And each display was very unique. The way that it was set up. But I always remember the Action Force, just basically because of the colour of the boxes. They were just so striking, they stood out, the vibrant colours kind of thing. And we used to go on holidays to Cornwall. And in Truro, the Tesco back in the early 80s then was in the town centre next to like a multi-storey car park. And we'd come out and we'd always like go into Tesco to get shopping because we used to caravan at that point, so we'd stay at a caravan site. And I can always remember in this Tesco the smell of the fresh baked bread. And what would happen is I'd get like a crusty cob, like a small crusty cob, but they were still warm. I like to eat while walking around. I always hollow it out and then eat the crusty bit thing. And they had a really good Action Force toy aisle down there. And I can always remember seeing the escape armour on the shelf. And it was one of the toys. I mean, we spoke about this briefly before we started recording. And it was the one toy that every time I walked past it, it was like, I want that. You know, like that. But something had always come along and kind of like put it further and further down the list. So I never did actually get it. You know, I did have a small selection of Action Force figures, but no vehicles. You know, but fortunately, you know, patience, you know, all comes to you with kind of thing. And I did get the escape armor and a hyena and a shadow track and Robo Skull, you know. So it's all about the bad guys, you know. I've no good guys. Oh, sorry, no, sorry. I think I've got one SAS action figure, you know, with the mask and that. Yeah. But all the other stuff, it's all the bad guys kind of thing, you know. So, you know, those are strong memories I have from, you know, like holidays and things like that. Seeing the Action Force stuff and. You know, and you know, I can remember picking up a Snake Eyes, but it was very much. I mean, I know now, but obviously I didn't know back then. But it was like it was an Action Force logoed G.I. Joe card. Yeah, that I think it would have been. Was it 85 when they first came? Yes. When they swapped over onto because it came with Timber. You know, the wolf. Yeah. And I got that one summer holiday when I went to Falmouth with some friends, and I had £5 with me, and I picked up Snake Eyes, and then the rest I got fish and chips or whatever you do kind of thing. Yeah. So yeah, no, some good memories there. No, that's all good stuff.
I just remembered the department store. I was thinking of Beals in Bournemouth. That's kind
Beals,
of yes. We went to Bournemouth or Boscombe a few years running on holidays as a kid. So that would be always somewhere I'd want to go in, just because you know I was used to seeing Woolworths and Argos and kind of limited amount of stuff you could see. But then going in somewhere like that, I think I'd go downstairs to the toy department there, and I think it was on the left, and just kind of looking at it and just this. Essentially just wall of all the same stuff, which you don't really see in the same way anymore as it in toy shops. You know, you see things. Some of the things have big sections. You know, you go in a Smiths or whatever, you might go in, I suppose. But just the scale of it all, I suppose, just seemed completely different at that stage.
Yeah, I think that's the thing though with modern toys now. It's such a quicker turnover. You know, like I say, I mean, you know, it's like, you know. Picking something like Optimus Prime was available from 84 to 86, where nowadays, you know, it's like toys seem to be it's like 6 months and they change it and swap it and change, you know, so, you know, they don't seem to have one particular piece that's produced all through like a long run.
Taking what you were seeing with the escape armor, for example, you know, nowadays, if you'd have seen that escape armor and wanted it, you might have seen it once or twice, depending how frequently you went there. But then the next time,
it'd be gone.
Would be as well. You know, that's the thing. Yeah.
But yeah, you mentioned Toy Store Beals. I think I don't know if it's a regional thing, but I remember a toy shop called Beatties as well. But I think
they were a chain, like a model shop as well.
Yeah, did models and RC stuff, radio control stuff and things like that. Yeah, well, they had one of those in my local town. So, good stuff.
Last place I ever saw Palatoy Action Force for sale, I think, you know, because there was when I was a kid, growing up in Retford, Meadowhall opened, you know, a big shopping centre, fancy new swanky shopping centre, and there was a Beatties in there.
Right.
And I went in there, and that was obviously quite late on. But they randomly had a Shadow Track and Laser Exterminator on the shelf in Beatties, you know, this brand new store that had opened up. All of that stuff had been cleared, so I guess they must have had stocks. But yeah, the last time I ever saw that on the shelf, really, I suppose it was quite
right. That's weird. Just reminded me, actually, when totally, I don't know why it's reminded me, it's just totally random. It's just touching back on the custom thing again. This is probably a couple of years ago now. Someone had done a custom Cosmic Cruiser, you know, is it Q-Force Cosmic Cruiser? But they'd used the base off a Shadow Track.
Yes.
So I think it was red at the bottom and then black at the top.
Oh, yes. Yeah. I think maybe Mark Elster, did that. He kind of, red shadowed a Cosmic Cruiser, Yeah,
and that made me want to try and pick some Junkers up and make one myself.
Yeah.
That looks really, really awesome. Looked really nice.
So, lots of inspiration out there for people to do stuff. Really, I suppose you look around and see what other people are doing, and it just kind of gets me to have a slump sometimes. I suppose when you can get in a bit of a funk with the hobby at times. I suppose.
With that, then, do you think you'll ever stop, or do you think you'll keep marching?
I think the only thing that would make me stop is if I needed to sell it. If there was something happened, some life-changing event. I'm not rich by any means, but if maybe financially I needed to sell, then that would be a wrench, but I'd have to do it. Other than that, I don't really see it. No. I mean, it's not really something that, when I'm old and I can't get up the stairs anymore or something, it's not going to be worth anything at that point. There aren't going to be collectors of Action Force out there. There'll probably be some mild interest in stuff, from a historical point of view. I'm sure there are people just generally, like you will see people nowadays still interested in tinplate toys and old stuff, I suppose, but not anything of value. So I think by the time, fingers crossed, hopefully all being well, that, by the time I probably want to sell it or need to sell it, by that point it probably won't be worth anything, and then it comes to the really what happens with all of this stuff when I'm gone, where does it all go to, I suppose, all this stuff I've spent so many hours and money and like everybody really, I suppose, Well, it is a valid point, because I don't think it's really, if it's the kind of thing that if you want to make money out of it, you need to be turning it over now. You need to be getting it in and flipping it and turning it over. If like myself and I'm assuming you collect it to enjoy it and sit with it so you can sit and admire it and things like that. When old age and infirmity comes along, like I say, it's not. I've had this discussion with other people, and some agree, some don't. But it's kind of like another, say, 20, 30 years' time, when our generation is sort of like shuffling off this mortal coil, or getting close to that. The collecting market's going to be flooded with this stuff, and it's going to drive the price down. That is, if anybody still wants to collect it. And especially, if it's like an Action Force vehicle or figure, or even a G1 Transformer, are they still going to be viable quality-wise? Because by then they're going to be, maybe 60, 70 years old? They're going to be old toys. Are they still, plastic doesn't age as well as what die-cast does. So it's, I suppose if you want to sell, and plan for a rainy day, maybe, the time is probably within the next 10 years. But if not, then, but like I say, I have children, and it's like, do I want to leave them with the hassle of having to sort through all this lot, when I'm not here? No, I mean, my dad passed away a few months ago, so, me and my brother and sister had kind of been through that house sorting and clearance thing, and I wouldn't want, obviously, to put anybody. It wasn't horrible. My dad had thought about a lot of those things in advance of anything. He made things as best as he possibly could. But I mean, I don't want to have someone to have to, essentially sweep all this up and lob it in a skip or something. I suppose by that point is probably what it might be useful for, really. I suppose, and just a burden on someone, I guess.
I mean, the one thing I did think of is, I mean, obviously, it'd be an idea, but I don't really know of anywhere that would do it. But maybe it's the kind of thing that you could leave to like a toy museum.
Yeah. I think I think it will probably be the only place, really, I suppose, that would have kind of an interest in those things, I suppose. But then I guess they might have. I think the Museum of Childhood in London, for example, they've got a lot of the Palitoy archive. And I think they've updated their displays recently. I went down a few years ago, and saw a lot of the stuff they have in storage for Palitoy, Action Force specifically. And they had some, an amazing display, like we were talking a little bit before we started recording about the Iranian embassy siege. Yeah. They had a big display. There was a big, lots of people have shared this picture online, with their kind of an Action Force themed kind of house scene kind of thing, similar to that. But then that I think is off display now, and I think that's probably gone into storage, and obviously they're kind of updating their displays with a focus on what other people and their kind of demographic of visitors will come to visit, I suppose, and want to see. So okay, sorry, I've turned it a bit morbid now with that talking.
But that's the thing. I mean, it's a consideration, because there's that. The other point that could be made to that as well is that, another 20, 30 years' time, in 40 years' time, are people going to be bothered by this stuff anyway?
No.
I mean, you may have one or two collectors that maybe want to pick it up because, I don't know, maybe say it's, I can remember my granddad used to collect this stuff, so it'd be nice to have the odd figure here. But other than that, I think
Star Wars is probably... Sorry, I was interrupting you.
No, I was just going to say, you get a couple of generations out, and it's like, they're just not bothered. It's not... I wouldn't say that... I'll probably get shouted at for saying something like this, but I don't think toy collecting has the generational appeal like what art or antique or car collecting has. That's a multi-generational thing. I think toy collecting is very much limited to the generation that you were in. So we're kids of the 70s and 80s, so we collect the stuff of that era kind of thing. When we move on, that'll be forgotten, and the young collectors will collect specifically what's they have a connection to. So who knows? But yeah,
I think Star Wars is probably the only thing that might book that trend, I think, because it has the enduring media of obviously the film behind it and everything else. So I can see there being kind of that still, yes, I would like this early bird set, or the Luke farm boy figure and that kind of thing, I suppose.
I'd agree with that. I'd agree with that concession. So conversely then to that, which leads quite nicely into the next question. What someone starting out collecting now, if you could offer them advice, what would you say to them?
I suppose it's just buy what you like, really. I know that sounds obvious maybe, but don't let yourself be swayed by what's popular, what other people say about something. You might, if I talk about Action Force or G.I. Joe, for example, you may love, there might be people out there who love the Eco Fighters in G.I. Joe, for example. They might like the Sonic stuff, those kind of things. So, and they're kind of mocked a little bit in the community, I suppose. And, I'm not saying I've never done that. It's easy to make fun of a vehicle like the Coastal Defender in Action Force, which is like a shed on wheels. But, if you love it, don't listen to people and don't let them tell you what to buy. Buy what you like. Show it off if you want to. Don't listen to that. Don't. When you see people, and I suppose they're asking for advice, so I'm not knocking it, but when you see people, asking, is this worth getting, and that kind of thing on Facebook posts, I get it if you're asking for advice, whether it's worthwhile the price you're going to pay or something, but don't, just, if you like it, collect it. If you can afford it, collect it, just do that. And don't buy it as an investment, I suppose. Don't buy it with the aim of thinking this might be more valuable. In Action Force, for example, when I started buying things, there was a lot of things very cheap. For the people I know in the community, I'm probably a year or two younger than most of them in terms of the Palatoy thing, right? Because I came to it a little bit later when they were buying it full price, so they were ahead of me of the curve, really, I suppose, and getting it when it was at its best price in those early eBay infancy days, But there's no way I could afford it, obviously, now to start out again. So don't ever buy it as an investment to sell. You want to buy it because it brings back those memories, and you like looking at it, having it on a shelf and being around it and doing what it does for you, I suppose.
Yeah. No, I was fortunate in that respect. With my box G1 collection, because I started probably 97, 98, I picked up most of that late 90s, very early. I think I tapped that collection out by 2003. So it was at a time when I could pick stuff up at a very reasonable price, for the condition, box and stuff like that. Some of the pieces now, if I had to try and do it now, it's just too much. It'd be just too much, It's good advice. I mean, I'd say I think I just had that, make a budget for yourself and try to stick to it. Don't overpay, because a lot of the stuff that we collect is overpriced for what it is really, and where the people to blame for that, because I think it's a collector's mentality sometimes that you think, oh, I've got to have it, it don't matter, I've got to have it kind of thing, and I think certain retailers or certain other collectors that
sell stuff will appear again.
Pardon? Sorry, what was that?
Sorry, your connection went a little bit then. Sorry, so I didn't. So the connection went a little bit. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Sorry, but yeah, a lot of the stuff you see, if it will appear again. The majority of stuff will come up, and if you see something, it'll come around again if you can't get it at that time.
Yeah. No, no, I'm sorry. No, it's I think the connection seems to, maybe it's sunspots or something. I don't know. The connection seems to be dropping and picking up a bit, but it's all good. It don't matter. I can either sort it in editing or I'll just leave it in, because it's just what it is. There's nothing you can do about it.
Yes, it is.
No, good. Right. Well, we're nearly at the end, Matt. Anyway, so
okay.
Last question is if there's anything you'd like to ask me.
I suppose, what are your plans for I mean, we've kind of touched on it a little bit really as we've been talking, I suppose, but what are your plans for the future, I suppose? How do you see your kind of collecting world changing, as we all get older a little bit? Are you still... Is it about stuff still, really, I suppose, which is a lot of what we do as collectors, or is it not necessarily about having to have that thing? You might have had it so you can pass things on. Do you feel a little bit now that you're more relaxed about letting things go, I suppose, which I am a little bit in some respects?
Yeah. Well, hold that thought. We'll be back after these messages.
Choose to be a Viking or a barbarian and play
crossbows and catapults. They skirmish at the outposts, and at the heavily guarded fortresses there's furious action. With warriors, spies, kings, strange and mystical weapons, towers topple and the sacred treasure is captured.
Better luck next time!
Crossbows and Catapults, the fantasy adventure game from Action GT.
The latest attacks, led by Baron Ironblood and his evil forces, seen here in exclusive coverage, have forced the country to take action. With me in the studio tonight is the squad leader from the newly formed SAS and the head of the new Z-Force, Captain Grant Campbell, who will be taking command of their combined troops at a secret destination later tonight. More news as it's made from New Action Force.
Matt has changed his scenery, but don't worry, it's all still good. So how can I answer the question? Right, okay, so my collection pretty much is done. I buy to now either upgrade or replace. I would say that's on the masterpiece line, but the vintage stuff like G1 Transformers, things like that, that's done. There's one or two pieces I would like, but I'm quite picky. I'm quite fastidious about what I want, so they would have to be in a particular condition. Is
that condition-wise for your pickiness, really? I suppose. I guess.
Oh yeah. You see, all the box G1 stuff that I've got, apart from the Insecticons, are all the Insecticons I've got are sealed. They're sealed, but all the others have been opened with stickers applied. However, the used sticker sheet's still there, the text specs is still there, the instructions, the inner card supports are there, the bubbles are still attached to the card backs. So there's there is a very specific. It's basically so when I started out doing that, I wanted it to be a case of if I chose, I could display them in the box, and they'd look good in the box, or if I wanted to display them out the box, they'd look good, kind of thing. So that's that kind of, and I can't see anything like that changing on that front. Future wise, there are still bits that I do pick up, like a magpie. I see something shining, it's like, I think I'll pick that up. That sort of like plays out when it comes to stuff like Black Series and Classified. Black Series, it's all about Stormtroopers and Stormtrooper variants. That's where that's my jam on that kind of thing. That fortunately though, that will be coming to an end soon because Hasbro finally pulled the finger out their ass and they've decided to do a Sant Trooper in the new Stormtrooper design.
Oh, okay.
So once I've got that, I can draw a line under that, and that's done. Same with Classified. I have a piece coming in, which we talked about, which I won't spoil because I want to do a video on it, but there's a piece coming on the Classified, and I think in all honesty, that will draw a line under my Classified stuff as well. So, that will be, the peak on that. Going forward, I think I go through phases where I look at certain aspects of my collection and I think I'll get rid of that. I mean, I already do have quite a healthy sales pile, so there's quite a lot of figures on there that's getting ready to be sold and moved on. They're all Masterpiece Transformers stuff, which at the moment's a bit slow. Have listed them previously, they've not gone, so I think things are maybe slowing down a bit on that front. I don't know, could be wrong. We're all getting older, and I look at things in and around my house where I live, my home and that, and I think, maybe I could sell some stuff and use that money to put into the home. It's like, just these little jobs that crop up and you think, or even just stuff like, I won't mind redecorating the living room or something like that, and I'm kind of, maybe I'm getting to that stage where, it's not about the collecting anymore, because I could see I think I could quite happily get rid of my Masterpiece stuff. I think I'd be happy and willing to let that stuff go. But the vintage stuff, I think that's the keep. That's in for the long term. I think that will be something that will have to be dealt with when I'm no longer here, so to speak. And I will mention it because it does make up quite a big element of my other collection, and that's the Spectrum stuff. That's not going nowhere. I think I'd probably let go of all the Transformer stuff before I let go of the Spectrum stuff.
Okay.
Because I was into the Spectrum and the gaming stuff and that, 2, 3, well, I think it started really with the ZX81. So, we're talking about maybe 4 or 5 years before Transformers rocked up anyway, kind of thing. So I don't know if that answers your question. I don't know if that touched it. But yeah, I do get to points where I think maybe it's time to move on. But I think I'll always collect things, but I don't know what they'll be. The thing that I'm enjoying picking up now is the peripheral stuff, like the merchandise that went alongside to support, the mainline stuff. So, just things like the little Ladybird books with the cassettes, that you can listen to and read along. I've got some old Transformer walkie-talkies. There's a Soundwave Design Centre. I've even picked up stuff like old colouring books or exercise books, pencil toppers. Weirdly, I've got a set of Transformers marbles, which are just plastic marbles with pictures of the Transformers, and I think they're from 84, they're from like the early days kind of thing, or 85. So I think I'd be more inclined to go down that route, but it's not something I actively pursue. It's the kind of thing that if I come across something or happen upon something and it takes my eye, I'll pick it up. I think the days of me trawling eBay on a daily basis looking for stuff to pick up, I think that's been and gone as that. But if something comes across, my screen, or I have a friend who runs a collector's shop in my local town, and if he gets odd particular bits in that he thinks might interest me, give me a shout, and I'll be like, oh yeah, I'll take a look at that kind of thing. But yeah, I think I'm definitely on the. I'd say I'm on the wind down with it, but I've not stopped quite yet.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so there you go. And I have dabbled in customization as well. I'll just keep it relevant and on point to some of the things that you do. But it's just usually been giving figures a lick of paint here and there, or I've not.
Transformers customizers out there.
Transformer customizers.
Yeah, I don't see. I mean, I appreciate. Obviously, I don't really pay attention to the Transformers world as such, but I guess I see it on the general forums and stuff. But I don't think I've ever seen anything. I remember anyway. Sorry.
I think you get. That's a good question in itself. I'll be honest with you. I don't 100% know. I've seen kind of like people that have repainted figures to represent other figures. Or they've maybe 3D printed a different head or something like that. But I think maybe with Transformers, you've got quite a big and healthy third-party community. So there's companies out there that are making the figures and the characters that Hasbro and Takara aren't. So maybe that kind of, balances out. But no, I think that's something for me to look into. I think I'll look into that because I don't entirely sure. I can't say for definite that I've seen a massive customization community. The few that I have seen have been really, really good. Yeah. There's a chap called Mark who did a custom masterpiece scale Death's Head from the UK Marvel Comics that Simon Furman created, the character. That is an amazing piece. That is sublime. That is really sublime. And I think it's a crime that no third party companies approached him to put that into production. Because I definitely have one, and I'm sure there are other collectors out there that have links and memories and connections to the old Marvel UK comics that would also snap it up as well. So but no, that's something for me to look into. I'll say they're certainly not to the level and degree like what yourself, with the Action Force stuff or even the Star Wars stuff, But I could be wrong. I've been known to be wrong from time to time, but I've been wrong more often than not, to be fair. But yeah. So yeah, right. We're at the end now, Matt. That's it.
Awesome.
So
thank you.
I appreciate and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Thank you for asking me. Thank you.
Chatting and that, it's been thoroughly enjoyable. And so the last thing really is just if you want to just remind people where they can find you on the socials.
Yeah, I guess, like I said, the main one, Instagram, the _ _Kraken _ Wakes. From there, it's got links to everything, really, I suppose. It's got links to my Facebook, eBay, and Etsy stores. So that's usually where I'm most active. Yeah.
No, good stuff. Right. Thank you very much, Matt. Enjoy the rest of your day. Nice sunny day that it is. And hopefully we'll catch up again sometime soon.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Right.
Thanks for
Take care. Cheers.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching the Collector's Archive. To ensure you never miss any of our content, please select the like, subscribe, and notification icons. Votes of icons.